The podcast name is the Higher Man Podcast, which is a name we came up with the other night, and I'll explain to you the background of why I came up with it and sort of the things that I think it speaks to maybe what we want the podcast to be about and like what we strive to be in ourselves. So the idea is from Nietzsche. He's the one that made the term the higher man. I think it's originally the Übermensch, because he's German, so that's like, I probably butchered that pronunciation.
Übermank.
The Übermank. I don't know either. We'll get roasted by if we have any. Sorry to our German fans there. But yeah, so basically what I was explaining to you the other night, I've actually, because we were going to talk about it today, I've looked a bit more into it. But then, so basically Nietzsche came up with this idea of the higher man. Basically, he has this really famous saying, like, God is dead. And that sort of alludes to the fact that in the development of the scientific methods and in everyone becoming very rational in their thinking and sort of viewing the objective world as what is real and what is true, that it sort of discredited a lot of the religious ideas that previously people relied upon, and
it was the whole state really,
gave sort of meaning to their lives. But that actually wasn't the only thing, because Nietzsche was quite a big critic of Christianity. For I think it's maybe a bit complicated why, but I gathered that the reason why was sort of that it promotes weakness as being like morality, so it's morally virtuous to be weak. So sort of for example, an easy example of that would be people might say they follow laws because they're a moral person, when really they're just afraid of the consequence, so it's cowardice. Okay. So I think that's one element to it. I think there's other elements he doesn't like. It sort of leads into so he sort of identified two different types of people given those circumstances. So the first type of people you have are people with in the herd, he calls it, or they have herd morality, which is basically people who is within that there's a couple of different types, but it basically comes down to people who spend their life pursuing comfort and entertainment and indulgence, just the sort of typical way a lot of people live their lives. Then also people who are resentful about the system, resentful about successful people, and there was, upon looking into this, he said something, I'll paraphrase it, but it's like people with herd morality will disguise their envy as calls for equality or something like that. Oh, wow. Which is quite mad that he said that, because obviously like social justice movements are so big now.
You're saying this.
Quite interesting, he said that a long time ago.
When was he about? Like what age?
Like late 1800s.
Right.
Yeah, so
it's very ahead of his time.
Yeah, definitely. But what underlies both of those is nihilism, because with Christianity, even though that people would have this herd mindset and this group, they're just following the crowd type of thing.
Yeah.
Because there was, for example, faith in the afterlife, that it gave people's life more meaning and fulfillment.
Right.
But with the afterlife removed, to simply pursue consumption of entertainment and comfort in your life ultimately breeds nihilism, because it's an interesting thing as societies get more developed and people's quality of life improves, and they start to
consume more, or
they start to feel more nihilistic when their lives get easier, because almost that struggle somewhat gives us meaning.
Right.
And yeah, but then so he presents the higher man as someone who, for one, doesn't follow the herd, and also so they have their own sort of values.
When you're talking about like the herd,
Yeah,
like people, would they subscribe to the herd mentality and the herd values, even if they don't necessarily believe them? That's what, do you feel like that's what a lot of people do with religions? Like they might not necessarily believe them, but they subscribe to them and
yeah.
live
Well,
them.
I think maybe the point is that they've never considered it for themselves. So that's what Nietzsche sort of presents the higher man to do, to reevaluate the values and not take them at face value for what everybody tells you is the right thing. So it's sort of developing that individual sense of morality based on what you truly value, and that sort of links into another part, which is like the goal of the higher man would be to pursue fulfilling their potential and like self-actualization, and often that would be through committing to some sort of creative endeavor and trying to create something, trying to produce something of actual value, because pursuing that ideal is sort of what the antidote to nihilism is, to, for example, to create beautiful works of art or to achieve something great. It gives life its meaning more, whereas especially the type of people, the herd mentality, who are resentful about things, will try and degrade achievements and throw them off. For example, they'll dispute rich people as simply being the oppressor, and they'll somehow adopt this victim mindset and think that makes them moral. But yeah, Nietzsche was a big critic of Marxism as well, which sort of relates to these ideas. But yeah, effectively, so the higher man, someone that aims to be the best possible they can, and also I liked the element of them sort of dedicating to create something of value, because I feel like that's maybe what we're trying to do with the podcast, to create something of value.
Yeah, maybe not necessarily for millions of listeners, but I think at least first and foremost for ourselves.
Yeah, definitely.
Something I think every episode will be something we can enjoy and hopefully learn something more off each other and about ourselves.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, that's the higher man name really. And a different aspect of it, which makes me like the name, is so you have a lot of I feel this tension sometimes when I think about like who I want to be. You see a lot of people on the internet or preaching like being a high value man. I don't know if you've come across those sort of people.
Everyone's heard about that.
But then I'd sort of, and there's elements of that which you want to achieve. For example, like they'll put forward a high value man of someone who wants to be successful, make a lot of money, be attractive to women, maybe be strong or have a good body.
Yeah,
these are things which obviously you want to have, but then I sometimes feel that this isn't always in line with being sort of, I guess you could put it as a man of high values. Would be a different. I just came up with that now actually, as a way of putting it. But which would sort of be following the advice of like ancient philosophers on how to live a good life. Sort of trying to combine that to see how as a man we can live good lives in the modern day. So it's got both those elements in there. And then the other thing I liked about the name was sort of being high, not necessarily in drugs, but high in life, sort of, which alludes to maybe the entertainment value that the podcast will have.
I'm sure we can do an episode on
so maybe hopefully it's a positive thing, hopefully it's enjoyable for both of us and the listeners.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I've got to say about the name.
No, I'm surprised when you brought it up on Saturday, but very pleased at the same time.
Yeah.
When you said it initially, I was like, is he just saying that because we're a little bit intoxicated at the moment, and then you explained the whole Nietzsche definition behind it, and
yeah, and there's a few different elements to it.
I think especially in the last few years, I've been very active against subscribing to like group mentality.
Yeah.
Like, I just hate the idea that these big groups in the world, no matter where they are on the spectrum, just have this power over people and make them subscribe to what they believe. And you want to evaluate every single different situation in every single different context, so that you can create your own hierarchy of values and not subscribe to this herd mentality. So this idea of the higher man and producing your own morals.
I mean, you just explained it perfectly there, creating, rather than, subscribing to the values that other people force upon you, to actually consider things yourself, and as you put it, create your own hierarchy of values and sort of live your life in a good way. And I'm sure there must be some fundamental crossovers between maybe what is put forward by other people and what you should actually do. Like, there's probably some good in that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you shouldn't blindly follow it. You should consider things yourself.
No.
And try to live in a way which is true to you, I guess.
There's always this idea that you can fulfill the purpose of being like a father, or fulfill the purpose of being a good businessman or whatever. But that fulfillment is only truly valuable if it's self-fulfillment.
Yeah.
And you need to have that self-fulfillment based on you doing what you believe, not just doing what someone else believes.
Yeah. You need to, some people might put, you need to be the hero of your own journey. You can't live out someone else's dreams for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, that's a good thing.